Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the chat show where we talk about empathy, employment and innovation every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. In honor of Black History Month today, I would like to highlight some of my amazing guests who are making incredible impact in our workplaces, communities and beyond. They are among the best and the brightest people I know in my business network, really inspiring countless people to dream big, break down barriers, turn obstacles into an opportunity, and give back to the society in so many different ways. In this Black History Month special segment of Chat with Nish, we are going to reveal some of the most memorable moments from the show. Take a look.
Well, and that's a great question because I think a lot of our audience is starting to hear more and more, especially with Black Lives Matters and others, that I'm getting calls all the time about diversity training, about inclusion training, and about equity training. And people say, well, what's the difference? And so I think it's important for your audience to know that diversity is really bringing people who are different together. Unfortunately, they found when you do that and you don't include them, then it's really not that effective. They have to have some feel included. And so that's where inclusion comes. You have a diverse team, you've got to include them. And then equity is fair inclusion, is really making sure that everybody is included in a fair way that's beneficial to the organization. So, but in order to understand that, you need empathy. You need to have that empathy to understand what equity is. And that so often I talk to folks who don't know themselves, who don't realize that they have opportunities that others don't have. And so they need to really look at equity in new ways. Well, it's important for every employer as we get back to normal to do something that I'm calling reboarding. You know, to have the empathy to understand, you can't say, okay, well, we're open for business. Just come on back to the office and pretend nothing ever happened. That doesn't work. You have to be empathetic to understand that people have gotten used to a new way of working. You have to empathize with some of the stresses that they have. They may have lost family members, or family members may have been sick. You know, their kids may still be at home and they have to deal with that. So the smart employers use empathy for equity to really understand where their employees are coming from. Gone are the days of command and control where you say jump and they say how high. Now you really need to understand how to influence people in a very, very different way using empathy.
And so the one thing that you want to start creating is an inclusive marketplace. And what I mean by that is if you go into Australia, then you're going to look at how do you work with the indigenous owned businesses there. So it's going to be that misrepresented community or that underrepresented community. And you look at Aboriginal owned businesses in Australia. You'll look at small, medium enterprises in the UK. So as I mentioned, our CPO is based in Germany. We look at immigrant owned businesses. That is the underrepresented community in that particular country. So we don't really say the word diversity, but it is really important that you look to how can you create an inclusive marketplace. And that's going to include everyone, you know, not only when you think about gender, but how do you think about all the different communities that come together and can be represented to have an amazing economic inclusive marketplace. So about 25 CEOs of major corporations, and including Julie Sweet from Accenture, who signed on really early to not only help with other women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, but getting on board to make a really inclusive marketplace. So we are so committed to hiring people with disabilities into our workforce. And as I just said earlier, into very technical roles that everyone is capable of doing, but also making sure that we are working with those businesses that are owned by people with disabilities, as we call DOBIes. So disability owned business enterprise is so important that corporates not only talk about it, but really sign up to do it. So we wanted to make sure that we were in, that we were ready, and that we're going to be that partner leading the way to create those jobs, to create those opportunities, not only in the US, but to do it on a global basis. So I tell everyone here that's on this webcast, that's listening, are you in? Are you in to be ready to create an inclusive marketplace? Because one other thing, Nish, Accenture did some research about a couple of years ago, and we did research showing what companies were leaving money on the table by not employing people with disabilities. Yes, there might be some learnings, there might be things you need to change, but that's the whole point of having one inclusive marketplace. And that's where Rangam has been so good, is to help us know those steps that we need to do to create the right work environment for someone to work in. And it's just been amazing. So if there's any other corporations that are not in, come join all 25 of us, including Accenture, to employ these businesses, employ people with disabilities. You will not be disappointed at all.
Job creation is paramount to tackling a lot of issues. Now, it won't solve all the issues in underserved or underrepresented communities, right? So we have to have a holistic approach to doing so. But a job is a fundamental way to really raise communities. And that is so, so important. So when you think about what diverse suppliers do, diverse suppliers hire from diverse communities, which is critical, particularly when you're lifting local and smaller communities, underrepresented and underserved communities, and different constituent groups. And I pointed back to the work that you guys do at Rangam, and the mission that you have to not only find employment for everyone, but you have a laser focus on trying to find opportunities of employment for individuals with disability. That is key, and those reasons right there are why supporting diverse suppliers has a multiplier effect, right? And I think not only the goods and services that you're providing are top notch, you need to be agile, nimble, and all of that from a competitiveness standpoint, but you're also doing the work of employing communities, lifting communities. So it's certainly important. And that's one of the things that we stress and focus on internally at BMS. It's not necessarily that, the dollars that we're trying to spend, it's what the suppliers are doing with those dollars that are important. And I also say this, and we touched on it a few seconds ago, around when you are afforded the opportunity of privilege by way of getting a contract with another corporation, et cetera, Nish, I know what you guys do, and I know what other diverse suppliers do. You go and give back. And that is critical, because we want to hold all of us to the higher standards of making sure that we're not just saying we're going to, collect a check and move on, but we're also going to leverage our point of privilege and our impact and the engine that we have behind us to help others. So that's why it's key to make sure that we are providing opportunities to diverse suppliers and have that flow down into the communities.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. And so I have, someone's developing a logo now. So I have a foundation called the Dale Caldwell Foundation, and we're really focused on ending systemic poverty. And the way to do that is through jobs, to really do what you're doing at Rangam. And so our motto now is jobs for peace, because we believe that when people are employed, it brings peace of mind to the family. It brings peace to the community, because when people are employed, there's less crime. And it brings peace to the world, because if there's full employment, then there's no war. And so we often are so focused on stopping fighting instead of really empowering people through employment, through jobs, and empathizing with what it's like to be poor. And people don't often understand what it's like when you don't have what you need.
The first thing that comes to mind, because we're on a digital platform here, is the way that technology has enabled us to to pivot from being in the office literally, on a Friday, getting the quarantine notice, and then having to pivot and work from home on that Monday, and still 7-8 months later, we're in this environment. So I would say that the technology advances of and the adoption of new platforms and technologies from diverse suppliers, right? We're seeing diverse suppliers that were in-person meeting planners pivot to leverage all of this online technology so we can support virtual meetings in a meaningful way. The one you participated in was run by a company called AMI, right? And that was a diverse supplier that pivoted in this environment, and they've been delivering a lot of different programs for us in this virtual environment. So I think the technology has been the most prevalent one over this 2020 period, and we're going to see more of that, right? Because the new normal, is it going to be working from home? Are we going to be on virtual conferences moving forward, and things of that nature? Who knows? But I know that the suppliers thinking about ways to make them as personal as possible, as productive as possible, and that is a brilliant thing as we move into 2021.
We made millennials and Gen Z a very, very vital part of our collaborative effort, not just at these lower tier levels, but including them and involving them at the highest levels of what we do as a company. And, because we were doing some things that were very unconventional, we set up some very unconventional structures in terms of project-based work within even creating the technology that we're currently using. The central focus is in terms of trying to figure out how to win back lost demographics in the entertainment space. You have to have those voices represented. So, it's one of the things that we did was I created this group, and you'll laugh at me. It's a combination between millennials and Generation Z. I call them Zillennials. Well, they like to call themselves the Z group. But what we did was we pulled aspiring writers, aspiring actors, aspiring everything, and they comprised this group of a think tank within the office. But they worked with every sector, every element, every entity of World of Dreams. And because of that, we were able to get their perspective on everything that we're doing to make sure that their voice is included, because they're the ones we're trying to win back. And some of the most brilliant things came out of these simple situations, sitting with them, listening to them. We're coming up with these, what we're thinking are great ideas. And they're like, no, we don't see the world that way. And if and it doesn't work that way for us. And so we were able to take that and use them in a way that most companies are not thinking to really, really get them involved. But it also became very interesting what happened with the Z group. It also became sort of a pool to pull from for promotion. So because you're able to really, really gauge, what these young people were really, really looking and aspiring to be, it became this sort of testing, a litmus test for their abilities to be promoted within the company as well. So there's a lot to be said from the collaborative process, and especially when you're trying to deal with solving disruptions or dealing with disruptions. There's a lot to be said for that collaborative process. One of the things that came from that with us, we actually we had to make a pivot during this whole COVID thing, and we did a meeting with the C-suite and then some of the selected board members. And in that, we came up with this collaborative plan to make a pivot because one of the board members had connections within commercial development and said, look, there may be some opportunities for World of Dreams here. So what we were able to do, because we had this agile structure within our companies, we were able to take all of those commercial development pieces that were supposed to be a part of phase one that we didn't have the funding for, and roll them up under this other project. We created another company between, three gentlemen and myself, and now those phases are moving forward under another entity that was created. So the collaborative process is the most important thing, especially when you're trying to solve difficult problems within a company.
I think if you look years and, pre-COVID and even years before that, people saw, diverse workforces or supplier diversity as a nice thing to have. And oh, it's okay. We have one diverse company. We're good. We have one diverse person in management. We're great. Now I think everyone is seeing that it makes business sense. I think we're seeing that having different ideas come to the table drives results. I think we're seeing that small, medium, diverse businesses can be innovative. They can really help you reach your end goal. And I think the key to all of this, Nish, is that now we're seeing that we can work together. Because a large corporation's like, no, I don't need to work with a small business. We're good. Now I think you're seeing that we need to work with small businesses. We need to work with diverse owned businesses. And that to me is what's created a better ecosystem. Whereas we thought, oh, it's nice to have. Yeah, I don't need that. It's imperative. It makes perfect business sense. If you're going to be sustainable for the near future, you must have a diverse workforce. You must have a diverse supply chain. You must collaborate together, and you must co-innovate together to be sustainable in the future.
Well, and again, I love innovation. I love new ideas, and one of the groups that I'm so excited, and you are part of our planning group, is this new company called Blue Innovation. And as we talk about Black Lives Matters, and we talk about the murder of George Floyd, and we talk about the unrest and equity, and really the issues with the police department, I've partnered with a guy named Jonathan Parham, who was the chief of police in Linden, one of the few Black chiefs of police in New Jersey, who had developed a process to evaluate body cameras. And so what he says is that, it's really not about defunding police, but it's really helping police become even more professional. Police should be professionals. They are professionals, and by really helping them evaluate the process, they become that much better at what they do. They like what they do. They connect with the community in a better way. So this is using technology, AR, AI technology, as well as operational evaluations to use innovation and empathy to improve a police department so we don't have some of the problems that we are dealing with on a national scale now.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed today's special episode. For me, the takeaway is that we all owe our freedom and prosperity to the principles of diversity and empathy that bind us together and help us innovate, grow, and enhance the quality of our lives and of those around us. Let me know about your takeaway in this and share that in the comments. Thank you for your time. I will see you all next Wednesday with new guest. Until then, goodbye and take care.